Hello, everyone. How's it going? Steven Shinder reviews in video form. It's noon or slightly past noon on Thursday, May 30th. I've had a little less than half a day to reflect on the Star Trek Discovery series finale, which I watched last night up until I think 1 o'clock a.m. on the dot. I'm still digesting it, still sinking in, but my schedule is just I have so many things going on, so apologies if this video feels kind of half-assed as I reflect on Star Trek Discovery. But yeah, I'm going to begin with some broad stroke overall thoughts on the show, and then I'll go into some kind of specifics about the finale. Not too much. I'm assuming you've probably, if you're watching this, you've probably seen the finale. So I thought the finale was fine. The show overall, since season one, Star Trek Discovery has gone through a lot of changes. And this show has had such a huge place with me when it comes to my Star Trek fandom and whatnot. And it had so much stacked against it at the start. People didn't like how new it looked, or I guess that made it look too different from the time period it's set in. It began about a decade or so prior to the original series. But I don't really mind that. When I watch these shows, I basically treat it like I'm watching them through a filter. So what's on the screen might not literally be how everything looks historically. So yeah, I don't mind things looking new or the actors looking different as long as the actors feel like the characters. And yeah, season one dropped at a time where, back when it was CBS All Access, right? This is pre Paramount Plus. And at that time, I was actually studying abroad in England. And so I have these memories of watching Star Trek Discovery, I suppose, on my laptop, on Netflix over there, because over there wasn't CBS All Access. So it was distributed on Netflix. And sometimes even like on my phone when commuting. Did I say commuting to the campus. So I have these memories here and there of like the how it felt watching it there in the hotel or at that school and pressing the buttons and some senses and whatnot. So I remember enjoying it very, very much. And, once I was back in the States, I'd watch it on CBS All Access. So season one, I thought had a really cool twist with what ended up happening with Lorca. And I really enjoyed these characters. I've been following them from the start. Michael Burnham, Saru, Tilly, Stamets, Colbert, like such characters that really pop out. And so I got invested. And then season two came, and that was sort of a retooling of the show. It brought in characters from Captain Pike and Spock, and characters who had appeared in the Cage, the original Star Trek pilot. I quite liked how it continued threads from that, and of course, we know that that season and its reception eventually led to the creation of the Strange New Worlds TV show, which is excellent, and um, fans seem to have less of an issue with than with Discovery. And you also got to remember these first couple seasons of Discovery were coming out as the Orville was coming out, and you had these annoying people saying, "Oh, the Orville is more Star Trek than blah blah," blah. And it's like I wish the Orville had come out during the huge gap between Enterprise and Discovery, so that that whole rivalry would not have been a thing. But I think that has pretty much dissolved. It took a while for the third season, The Orville New Horizons, to come out, and now like I don't even know what's happening with the show. That third season came out at a time where we had Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks, so filling in the need of some fans to have something that feels more like classic Trek, as well as something that's more humorous Trek. So it's like, where does the Orville fit into all this? And there are some things I thought the Orville did really well, and some things that I feel like they could have done better. But yeah, it feels like that has sort of dissolved, but it was such an annoying thing at the time, to the point where I felt like I had to leave Orville groups. Um, but all that aside, season three came around, and that was another sort of revamp of the show. By that point, the characters had jumped several centuries into the future. So the show that has gone the furthest into the Trek timeline. And I think that was my favorite season of this show. I really enjoyed the first couple, but season three, I think was probably my favorite. Week to week, I would discuss it with a friend. We would do like these episode dissections and recaps reflecting on the whole thing, and those are nice memories. And the show, I know some people were this is gonna, like, if you haven't watched the end of season three, I'm gonna go ahead and say what happens at the end of that season. The ending, the revelation that the burn, this catastrophic thing that happened across the stars, a revelation that it was the character Sukal. When he was a child and lost his mother, he got really sad and screamed, and then that causes the burn. And some people don't like how, I guess, that doesn't feel like a sci-fi explanation, but there have been so many things in Star Trek that are not quite explainable that I don't really mind it. And I quite love how thematic it is that, once something goes wrong for a child, the whole universe goes wrong. It all starts with the child. They have to have a world that is good and safe for them, so that it's good for everyone. So yeah, I think season three was my favorite of the show. I quite liked the characters adapting to the new status quo. Wow, I didn't mean for that to rhyme. And Burnham and Book's interactions, their romance, it was interesting. Season four, I still enjoyed, but I could feel like I was a bit less interested than in the previous seasons, but I was still invested in the characters. And then season five, gets announced as the final season, and maybe they were hoping it could go longer, but 5 seasons I think is a good run. And with the breaks in between, because streaming shows being what they are, and I guess the expenses and filming schedules and whatnot, and we of course also had a pandemic in the middle of all that. Altogether, it was a 7-year run in terms of how long it took for these 5 seasons to be released. So pretty average in that sense for how the Star Trek shows from 1987 to 2001, how long those lasted. And I know some people would like for Discovery to continue further, but I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I'm fine with things kind of just ending right now. uh like the Bad Batch, I was fine with that ending with 3 seasons, and my interest in that was kind of that Star Wars show was kind of waning um during the third and final season. Star Trek Lower Decks, it's so wholesome and hilarious, and that's going to end with its 5th season. I know there's a fan campaign to show the higher ups that um, people want more seasons, and good on you if you're doing that. I kind of remembered that campaign really late last Saturday, when it was happening, and then put Lower Decks on, but I'm kind of just fine with it ending. But if it does get more seasons, I'm definitely gonna watch. Like, I love those characters. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just at a point in my life where it feels like a bigger investment uh, to keep up with some of these shows, I suppose. And I say that as someone who's kept up with a bunch of shows for multiple seasons for a long while now. I think I'm just like at a point where things are changing with me as a person, and that's just going to be different for everyone. I do all these other vlogs and podcasts elsewhere. I'm a novel writer. I have stuff there I want to really focus on. So it feels less overwhelming to me if some of these things just have a proper conclusion, even if they could have gone on a bit longer. But yeah, season five, I can kind of see, season five of Discovery, I can kind of see the criticism that the material in it feels like it could have just been one movie. I can kind of see that. I was really fascinated by the premise of this season, which to some, I can see how to some it might be kind of eye rolly, like this idea of looking for the progenitors, the creators. Star Trek Five: The Final Frontier, that got a lot of flack for being about looking for God, and like to me, like that's a very similar idea, but I guess because it's God specifically, there's more baggage that comes with that, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, this idea of the progenitors, I think came from a TNG episode, if I remember correctly, but kind of got slipped under the rug. But I quite liked how that was being explored in this season. It kind of reminded me of the direction that Ridley Scott's Prometheus wanted to go before, it really took a swerve and the direction of that whole franchise changed, which, I mean, that's a whole can of worms right there. So the idea of these progenitors, and I was watching this season at a point where I'm kind of just fine with some shows not answering every little thing. So it felt very apt when in this finale Burnham meets a progenitor, and then it turns out that there are progenitors of the progenitors. Like there are creators of creators of creators, and it's like you just can't see everything. And I mean, there is a point where Burnham does get the gift of seeing, like, I guess, billions of years of history. But yeah, and what happens with the technology that they find here is, I guess, pretty much what you'd expect. I do wish this final season had given more screen time to some of the characters, but overall, I do appreciate what this show gave us. And, it touched on some interesting uh, topics and some very important social issues. So, yeah, I think this show gave us a lot of great stuff. Even if the final season, I think, was kind of just fine to me anyway. This final episode, which was 85 minutes ish, I was really surprised by the length, but I mean, good on them for giving the final episode a longer runtime. It kind of took me out of the universe once it did this epilogue. What's funny is Discovery did this thing with season three, or I really the end of season two, going into season three, doing this time skip far into the future, further than any Star Trek show has any ever gone. And then here they just couldn't resist doing another time jump, showing Burnham and Book have grown older. They have a son. And this epilogue, there's I feel like there have been shows I've seen over the last several years that have done the time skip ending so much that I felt taken out of the universe watching this one, being fully aware that, man, so many shows like rely so much on these time skip endings. Star Wars has done it. There have been other shows here and there, like I've said, I've seen the last several years that have ended with this sort of thing, and I don't know. I would like to kind of just see less of that. And the epilogue, it was okay. I'm sure lots of people got really emotional from it. And again, I love these characters. It was just hard for me to get emotionally invested during this epilogue because of being like super hyper aware of, man, this is a thing that so many shows like rely so much on with their endings. But yeah, it was just kind of funny that you expect Discovery to end, and then Starfleet Academy, which will surely pick up from like after, like you expect that to be now the furthest thing into the Star Trek timeline, but now we have this epilogue. It's like Discovery just feels like it has to win the points and everything, and it just, yeah, it's this epilogue is the furthest in the future of Star Trek. Well, technically, the short treks titled Calypso, that happens right after this epilogue, so that's the furthest as far as I'm aware. And I feel like they did the bare minimum of tying into Calypso, honestly. So, and I mean, I guess they didn't have to do too much, but I don't know. It just felt kind of weird. I honestly kind of forgot about that short treks episode from a few years ago. So I haven't really been thinking about it for a long while. But yeah, I thought the finale was fine. I'm kind of wavering between a 7 out of 10 or 7.5 for the finale. So I'll just say 7 and a quarter. And maybe the entire final season overall is a 7.5. But yeah, there were points throughout the show's run over the course of its 5 seasons where I thought maybe this would end up being my favorite Star Trek series. Um, I was such a huge, I enjoy all the Star Trek shows, but I think with the show having peaked for me with season 3, and then season 4 and 5 still enjoyable but less interesting to me in terms of how invested I was. I think I can firmly say that Discovery, like the whole run, is not necessarily my favorite number one Star Trek show. I think maybe it's still The Next Generation, um, which I know that's probably a really boring answer, but Strange New Worlds could have potential to dethrone The Next Generation. So we'll see where that goes. And again, I'm looking forward to Lower Decks' final season, and I guess we'll see what the decision making is with there, or with that rather. Prodigy, I'm really invested in Prodigy, actually. I'm really glad Netflix picked up season 2. I mean, Netflix of all places, where I marathoned the other Trek shows back in 20 early 2010s to 2014. That's another thing. This Discovery series finale had the revelation that Cronenberg's character is actually Agent Daniels. And when that name was said, I'd honestly forgotten who Agent Daniels was. It'd been like 10 years, back in 2014 since I last watched, when I finished watching Enterprise. So I had to like look that up, honestly. But I'm sure people seem really excited about that reveal there, but it's just funny, like 19 years later the Enterprise legacy is still persisting. So yeah, again, Prodigy season 2, really aching for news about that. And there's of course some news about other Trek projects in the works. There's that Section 31. I think it's a movie now. Michelle Yeoh is in it, so that could be cool. I kind of hope that that leads to a TV spinoff, even if she's not in the TV spinoff. And there's some other stuff. I mean, the Kelvin timeline. I'm, still um, stuff over there with that timeline. It has felt really like I'll believe it when I see it type thing. But yeah, it feels like some Trek stuff is still happening. I'm not sure if it's still at the same in the same capacity, like if it'll have the same quantity that it's been putting out the last several years. I consider the Paramount Plus or CBS All Access slash Paramount Plus age of Star Trek. I've been considering that a golden age of Star Trek. Uh, I really do think that this has been a nice return for the franchise, but at the same time, after 7 years now, I'm at a point where I'm kind of, I would be fine with less volume, but hey, that's just where I am in my life. For almost a year and a half, I've been going through the post Nemesis Star Trek novels, in the pocket universe continuity, I guess people call it. But I got to a point recently where I felt like I really needed to take a break from all that and reading Star Trek books as frequently as I'd been doing, so that when I do get back into it, I'll have an easier time feeling like I'm more invested and enjoying what I'm reading. So I guess you could say, like, for me, it's kind of been ebbing and flowing when it comes to Star Trek. But overall, I guess I would say I'm somewhat satisfied with this finale, even if I was more high on the show earlier in the series than I am at the end of it. But yeah, it feels like the right time for Discovery to end. And I'm glad that we got it at all and it got a conclusion of sorts. So yeah, that's it for now. My next video will probably be Doctor Who related. It'll come out sometime over the next couple of days. But yeah, thanks for tuning in and see you all next time. Live long and prosper.